Professor Żęgota, thank you very much for accepting our invitation. It's been a while since we've seen each other, like for, I suppose, 11 years in Olsztyn. It's been a while. You've been very busy, and the articles, the papers which you've published in some of the best European journals are truly incredible, and forgive my bias, but one of the best, in my opinion, is the one which you published with us, with Institut Sandy, with our first volume, where you suggest that Kaliningrad Oblast is a geopolitical wedge. Would you like to elaborate on that one? Why is it so important, this region?
Okay, firstly, thank you for your invitation and for interview. I didn't know that it will have such form. Thank you for your good words about my article. I will try to publish and release some another articles in journal in Institut Sandy. It is a very great initiative for me, from my point of view. Kaliningrad region is very specific part, specific area of and part of Russian Federation, because it is located in Baltic Sea region. It is region crucial for development of international influence of Russian Federation, both in regional and global dimension. This is why Kaliningrad region play extraordinary role, which we can describe as role of carrying on influence of Russian Federation in Baltic Sea region. It is region surrounded by member states of the European Union and NATO, and this is area of both cooperation and conflict between Russian Federation and West, and we can explain this role using paradigm of geopolitical wedge, which can be understood as a small area located in some region, which is area of interests of some global or regional power, and we can observe a few geopolitical wedges, Russian geopolitical wedges in Europe. It is Kaliningrad region, it is Transnistria, Crimea since 2014, and for example South Ossetia and Abkhazia, Armenia as well in Caucasus region. This is why even if we look at map, we can see this geopolitical location and geopolitical role of Kaliningrad region. In further part of this interview, I will try to explain this extraordinary role of Kaliningrad region, especially in processes which we can observe now in Europe, processes connected with rivalry or even crash of two big processes of regional integration. On one hand, it is European integration, whose part in which participate Poland, Lithuania, the countries which are surrounding Kaliningrad region. On the other hand, it is the reintegration of post-Soviet area, post-Soviet space, carried out under auspices of Russian Federation, and Kaliningrad region as a part of Russian Federation is also part of this processes of reintegration of post-Soviet area, which we can observe from the beginning of 21st century.
Okay, so would you say that Joseph Stalin had it pretty much sorted out when he came up with this idea to incorporate Kaliningrad to Soviet Union? Did he know that Soviet Union might collapse at one point back in 1945 after the Second World War?
I don't really know if he would predict collapse of Soviet Union, but one important point is that he was creating new political map of Europe after World War II. He tried to use some geopolitical theories. Some people say that he was inspired by articles and books of Karl Haushofer. This is why geopolitical and geopolitical map of Central and Eastern Europe was created on the basis of classical geopolitical theories. This is why one of the aims of Joseph Stalin was just carrying on influence on Baltic Sea region. This is why he tried to join the Baltic states to Soviet Union, which he did in 1940 during World War II. This is why he decided to divide former East Prussia, former territory of German state, German Empire, between Soviet Union and Poland, and this is why he didn't decide to just to get all territory of East Prussia to Poland. So I don't really know if he predicted collapse of Soviet Union, but in fact contemporary Russian authorities in brilliant way, I can say, use this very specific geographical location of
can be
Kaliningrad
thankful
region.
to Joseph Stalin.
Yes. So
Professor Żęgota, thank you much for this thorough explanation. How about you? Would you mind to explain us what's your insight on Sandy? How did you become professor? What led you to politics and international relations? What's that fascination? Where this originates?
Okay, I always was interested in both in politics and geography, and geopolitics is one of paradigms of international relations theory or political science theory, in which we can use both tools of political science and geography. This is why it is very, very interesting. I graduated as you from Warmia, Mazury University. After this, I started to do my research on Kaliningrad region. My mentor there was Professor Kadyrov, director of Institute of Political Science. I can say he even inspired me in some way to do research and carry out this research on Kaliningrad issues. I can say that main determination was geographical location of Olsztyn, town in which is located our university. We are located, we are neighboring region with Kaliningrad region. This is why we are just sentenced to do research and carry out research. And, yes, of course. I use this word to show our determination of our scientific society, Institute of Political Science, to carry out this research on the Kaliningrad region. The main inspiration is to search for some specific specialization in which we could be very, very good, not even in scope of Poland, but even in global level. And this specialization is Kaliningrad region. This is why not only me, but also other scientists from Institute of Political Science of University of Warmia and Mazury carry out research on Kaliningrad issues in various branches, various dimensions also.
So I suppose that it's not only Professor Żukowski, but also Professor Kazbiewicz, Professor Helminiak, and many others who basically influence you to push you towards this dimension. Yes, I agree. I can even promote our book, which we released in 2016. Book is titled Kaliningrad, its internal and external issues, and it presents scientific
works of our colleagues and employees of Institute of Political Science when we present different dimensions of research on Kaliningrad region. Of course, as I said, main leader of our society, Kaliningrad society, is Professor Arkadiusz Żukowski, who did and does research on cross-border cooperation between our region and research on identity of inhabitants of borderlands. We can add also Professor Marcin Chełminiak, who is specialist in field of geopolitical significance of Baltic Sea region, Kaliningrad region, and geopolitical dimension of relations between the European Union and Russia. There is also Dr. Wojciech Kotowicz, who does research on cross-border cooperation and, for example, mechanism of local border traffic. There is Professor Wojciech Modzelewski, who also did research on cross-border cooperation. So there are many specialists in this area, and I can say that we are one of the very few scientific centers in Poland, even in Europe, who are focused on Kaliningrad issues and Kaliningrad region. As I said earlier, our geographical location is main determinant. Who would be specialists in this area if not we?
It seems that the Olsztyn School of Geopolitics is emerging, and it's emerging strong, and I'm sure that you can compete with Gdańsk and other more, let's say, renowned centers of political science studies. Whilst we are talking about Kaliningrad, you've made this claim that it's one of the most important geopolitical regions in Europe. Does this region present some sort of threat to outside environment? What would you say?
Of course, it is in fact a source of threats for surrounding countries, but not straightly military threats. Some people, even in Poland, create some scripts, some scenarios about or on military conflict between Poland and Russia, or Lithuania and Russia. I would like to emphasize that it is absolutely political fiction. I don't believe in every military or any military action of Russian Federation against Poland. What would be aim of Russian military aggression in Poland? They cannot occupy us. They cannot have any influence on our political stage or political life. Or even if they want to have influence on our political life, they will use other tools. There are just perfect, in my opinion, in some actions which would be called hybrid war, and they do this against Ukraine. I'm sure that they use it against Poland. They don't have to use open military aggression. But of course, military strengthening and military potential of Kaliningrad region and location military troops in Kaliningrad region is, of course, for me, in my opinion, is some tool of creating influence and impact on situation in Baltic Sea region, because everyone will be afraid of Russian military potential, not even Poland or Lithuania, but even Sweden and Finland. So military troops in Kaliningrad are located in Kaliningrad region not to carry out any military action against Poland or Lithuania, but to be another tool of some hybrid actions of Russian Federation. This is the main important threat connected with Kaliningrad region. It is a threat which results from presence of Russian troops in Kaliningrad region, but they are not located there to carry out any strictly open military action against Poland.
So, Professor Żęgota, the explanation which you've given me could be an explanation which would be used by realist thinker. Would you be okay with such characterization, or would you be offended?
Yes, I agree. Many scientists and researchers emphasize that role of Russian Federation in contemporary international relations should be described using realism theory. But from my point of view, we should treat geopolitical paradigm as a part of realistic theory. This is why geopolitical paradigm is a very useful tool for explain Russia's policy towards the European Union or West, or Russian policy in Baltic Sea region, Russian policy in context of role of Kaliningrad region. So I can say that realism theory is quite good to explain these processes, especially from point of view of Russia, especially activity of Russia in Ukraine, in conflict with Georgia, Russia's influence on.
Well, exactly. How else would you explain this? Occurrences, if not through the realist perspective, annexation of Crimea or Russian intervention in eastern Ukraine or Georgia 2008.
Yes.
Well, that's pretty much pure power struggle. What realists are very sophisticated in explaining, aren't they?
Okay. Yes. I can say that one of the main basic claims of realism is that the only real actors of international relations are states and its interests in this international environment. I can say that, and if we look at interests of Russian Federation, especially since the 90s of 20th century and the beginning of 21st century, these interests are focused at reintegration of post-Soviet area and make I can say make Russia great again. This is main aim of Russia's interest in international relations, and Russia is trying, and Russian authorities are trying to achieve these aims using different tools. They are trying to present itself, especially in relations with European Union and United States, as a serious actor, serious partner. At the same time, they do some military actions against Ukraine, against Georgia. The main question is why Russia is so active against Georgia and Ukraine. Russia is still, as I said, trying to carry out a process of reintegration of post-Soviet area, and is trying to stop any attempts of Ukraine or Georgia to join the European Union or NATO. How they do this? They can, for example, or even Moldavia is a good example for this view, for this theory and this claim. For example, when there is some country which shows some European aspirations, the only way or the easiest way is to develop some conflict conflict, border conflict with this country, and then this country will not be ready to join the European Union and NATO, because NATO will not accept joining any country which has any conflict, any problems, border conflicts, especially with such great power as Russia is.
So are you saying that President Vladimir Putin reads The Prince before he goes to bed, or he's like a fan of Hans Morgenthal's notion of national interest? Should we be afraid in Poland, Lithuania?
Maybe it is. As I said, Joseph Stalin was inspired by books of Karl Haushofer, so maybe Hans Morgenthau is also some source of inspirations for Vladimir Putin. But in my opinion, I can say that President Putin isn't a specialist in a theory of international relations and theory of realism. He is trying, in my opinion, to apply in practical dimension.
He just sucked it from his mother's milk,
maybe,
basically, and he has it ever since his birth.
Yes, especially his work in Russia in Soviet Secret Service proved that he is realist, in fact. So in my opinion, he's trying to apply this realism theory. And if our approach to geopolitics, geopolitical paradigm is that it is part of realism, we can also say that geopolitics is very important factor of Russian strategic policy and international relations. Even if we look at map of Europe, if we can see that Russia has two gates to seas and oceans in Europe. These two gates are Baltic Sea and Black Sea. This is why we can explain in that way we can explain Russia's determination to carry on or even strengthen its influence and impact on these two big sea basins. This is why Russia took over Crimea, because of its importance and influence of this region from point of view of presence of Russia in Black on Black.
So would you say that from this perspective, the Black Sea, from Russian perspective, Russian geopolitical imperative is more important than the Baltic Basin?
I think that we can compare the role of these two seas at the same level. Maybe if we look at the actions of Russia in the Middle East, in Syria, Black Sea is even more important. But in my opinion, approach of Russia to Baltic Sea region and Black Sea region is at the same level. The main difference is that in Baltic Sea region, Russia has to show some actions against members of the European Union and NATO. But
there's this theory that Baltic Sea is seriously overcrowded, so there's not much way for Russia to show its full potential, isn't it? And Black Sea in general is a gate to the Mediterranean Sea. So, I read one of your papers which clearly says that, from the Russian perspective, the southern angle is much more important. I'm specializing in Syrian conflict, so without the base in Sevastopol, the operation in Syria wouldn't be possible, as a matter of fact.
So maybe it is your point. It is your point.
We are heading there.
I live closer to Baltic Sea. This is why maybe my point of view is different from yours. But
let's talk about perceptions, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Surely perception in Poland is different than in Bulgaria. So especially when it comes to some artifacts left after the Second World War. Well, as you can see in the city center of Sofia, you can basically see the massive monument of the Soviet soldier liberator, called liberator, and Bulgarians don't seem to mind these monuments, whereas in Poland, Polish people, me included, were a little bit apprehensive about leaving the traces of the past and the past occupation, one may say. What's your view on that? How would you describe these differences in the attitudes of Bulgarians and Poles?
In fact, as I know, Russian army didn't occupy Bulgaria after World War II. They were not located troops of Red Army after the end of World War II. In Poland, we had some military troops, military bases of Red Army. It is first difference between Poland and Bulgaria. Second one is second difference is related to political situation in Poland and Bulgaria during World War II and after World War II. In Bulgaria, as I know, communists, Bulgarian communists took over the power in state. Practically without any help and support from Russian army. So some local or state political power or political group took over the country without any influence of external factors, yes, but in Poland, communist system and communist regime was just everyone looked at this as a regime which was taken from Soviet Union with Soviet Red Army, and local Polish communists didn't have any or had very small influence on our political life before World War II and during World War II. This is why for us it was absolutely I can say stranger regime for political regime and political idea for us. This is why maybe we can observe also difference to approach to or difference in historical policy or even monument policy in Poland and Bulgaria. My institute did research on this issue. We even released some book about monuments policy in Poland with regard
I've come across with that one. It's very interesting, as a matter of fact.
Yes. So our main conclusions from this research was that there is some also difference between approach of Poles, approach of Polish society to Soviet authorities and approach to Soviet soldiers, which died about 600,000 Soviet soldiers died in the territory of Poland fighting against German army. We remember about this and we know this, but we also know that after first line of Soviet soldiers went to Poland some political officers of Russian Red Army and tried to create new political regime, and they did this in fact. This is why we can explain how our attitude to monuments of Red Army is so different from
I suppose the fact that Soviet army just stood and waited for the Warsaw Uprising to be crushed by Germans doesn't help on the fact that between 1939 and 1941 Soviets did happen to kill like thousands of our officers and,
yes,
and
in Katyn,
Starobielsk, and
Kharkov,
all of these dreadful places. So this doesn't help, and maybe Bulgarians didn't have such an experience in general. But well, I suppose that we, especially we in Poland, we like to bring to such debates, contemporary debates, history. History is always around us. There is an explanation about the relations. How can we move forward from this impasse?
Of course, our relations, or in fact lack of these relations, because we since 2014, even maybe even earlier, we cannot observe any relations. There is no meetings of officials. There is no meetings of ministers of foreign affairs, prime ministers, presidents. So we can say that there are no relations. The only relations are relations carried on at the level of cross-border cooperation. So when we are trying to talk about improvement of these relations, I think that scientific society would be a factor of this improvement, and of course cooperation between local governments from Poland and Russia, from Poland and Kaliningrad region. Of course, relations of official interstate relations between Poland and Russia. One of the factors of these relations are relations between the European Union and Russia. Another factor is conflict in Ukraine. So I think we cannot wait for very intensive improvement of these relations. But in fact, firstly, we should solve this problem of Ukraine. After this, we will think about improvement of these relations. So, as I said, first way to develop or rebuild these relations is our relations between scientific society in general, Polish and Russian cultural integration, cultural cooperation, and of course another field, another area is economic and trade cooperation between Poland and Russia. It can help in improvement of political relations. But as I said,
how can we improve these economic relations when, for instance, Russian government puts a ban on Polish apples or Polish meats, or in general retaliates for what we did in Ukraine? We stood by basically Ukrainian President Poroshenko and the Ukrainian people. We strongly opposed what happened in Ukraine as a country. So, and Putin sees as an affront. So I understand that liberal institutionalists would basically put forward the economic reasons for as a cause of problems with political relations. But how would we go forward without this lack of willingness on both sides, as a matter of fact?
For me, as I said earlier, we cannot improve these relations between West and Russia without solving Ukrainian problem. We can do this in many ways. Maybe there will be possibility to talk about this in wide view, maybe during this interview. But there is no chance for improvement of these relations without solving of Ukrainian problem. With regard to Ukraine, Russian authorities play very important role, and they use realism, applied realism. In fact, maybe we will improve these relations using trade and economic relations in future. But first step is absolutely crucial for me, Ukrainian issue.
Okay, well, as a political advisor, which you will become perhaps on the state level soon. I'm certain about that. But it's not only in Poland, because you've advised many bodies, as a matter of fact. So imagine yourself that you are giving advice to Ukrainian president, the servant of the people, President Zelensky. What would you tell him? The situation is very tense in the east, and it doesn't look like Crimea is heading in the Ukrainian direction. Now, Russia is basically undermining the Minsk process, and it's a dreadful situation.
The situation is very complicated. I would like to say that President Zelensky went to power in Ukraine in very specific situation. He said to Ukrainian nation that he will guarantee peace in Ukraine, especially at east of Ukraine. His main rival, President Poroshenko, showed himself as somehow even nationalist, very strong political actor. And in my opinion, President Poroshenko couldn't do anything in solving, in my opinion, the problem of Crimea and eastern Ukraine. In my opinion, President Zelensky is the only political actor in Ukraine who would decide and solve the problem of eastern Ukraine and Crimea in the only pragmatical way for me. It is not very popular opinion, but I'm supporter of this opinion that President Zelensky and Ukrainian authorities should just cut off national republics, Donetsk and Luhansk, and cut off Crimea and just accept the facts. Now the only facts are that Crimea is in fact part of Russia. Donetsk and Luhansk national republics are not members of Ukrainian territory, and they will not be in the future, in my opinion. There is strong influence of Russian-speaking society.
Don't you think that if Russia would be given these republics, wouldn't they ask for more? In general,
no,
in the East?
I think that Russia counted in 2014 that action against other regions of Ukraine will be easier than it were in fact. The same actions as we could observe in Donetsk and Luhansk, Russian authorities tried to develop in Odessa, in Dnipropetrovsk, in Kryvyi Rih, in Kharkov, for example. But there some pro-Ukrainian, pro-Kiev activists didn't support Russian actions, and this is why it was great barrier for Russian actors. In these regions, in Odessa region, in Kharkov region, there were some separatism potential, but actions of Ukrainian Kiev authorities didn't accept this situation.
Assuming that you are right, wouldn't be that fair for Russia to, even if Ukraine would be keen to accept such terms, would that be not fair for Russia to actually compensate for these territories, for these lost territories to Ukraine? I don't know, in some sort of material or any other way to give back. I don't know.
I don't believe in this
Kaliningrad Oblast to Ukraine.
No. I don't believe in any recompensation from Russia. As realists, we should look at real facts, and the fact is that Crimea is part of Russia from point of view of international law. It is still part of Ukraine, but
from perspective of international law, it's basically it can be compared to Northern Cyprus because it's never been accepted that Turkey occupation there would be legal.
But in fact, we cannot wait for going back Crimea to Ukraine. Crimea is lost for me, absolutely. And my thesis is that Eastern Ukraine, Donetsk and Luhansk republics are also lost for Ukraine. Why? Because it is strong area of strong Russian influence. Because it is strong Russian-speaking region with strong separatism potential. Assuming we think that Donetsk and Lugansk go back to under Ukrainian auspices, all main powers, political powers in these regions, Donetsk, in Lugansk, will block in future any actions of Kiev authorities, Kiev government. I meant at European integration or integration of NATO. For me, strategic aim of Ukrainian authorities is just joining the European Union and NATO.
So we're talking about the realities now, but how about, excuse my science fiction thinking, but how about the moment, the hour when Putin dies? Imagine that situation. Russia is in some sort of havoc, and would Ukraine not try to take advantage of the situation that Russia would be weaker and they could regain these territories? Let's be adventurous here.
I'm not sure if it is possible, because I think that Vladimir Putin will try to behave some another political leader.
But he's a human, isn't he?
Yes. Yeah. I know it, but they will try to just to prepare another some political actor, political person to be another president or another influential person in Russian political life. But of course, Vladimir Putin is quite young.
Well, he's 67, isn't he?
But
67.
I think that he will live another 20 years or even more.
Bless him. But
it's strong.
You know,
man. It's strong man. So
you cannot predict the future. And hypothetically speaking, there is such a case scenario which might happen. And my point is that, you know, the man actually gathered so much power in his hands that you cannot say who is the second in command.
Because would you say that now Prime Minister Medvedev, would you think that he's the second the second strongest person in Russia?
Absolutely, I cannot agree with this, because he is too weak person for me. There is no second. The strongest person in political life of Russia. We can say that some strong person is Igor Sechin, Alexei Miller, leaders of Rosneft and Gazprom. Some strong person is Sergei Shoigu, Ministry of Defense. Maybe another potential candidate to be influential politician in Russia is new Prime Minister of Russia, Mikhail Mishustin. But so there are many candidates. Some people say even in Poland very popular was that some people said that Russia should function without Putin, Россия без Putina in Russian, but some people answered that if we get rid of Putin from Russia, another president of Russia will be Ramzan Kadyrov. So I don't know which scenario is better. This is why, in fact, I think that better situation will be stability in Russia. Talking about changes of political map of Europe or Russia as a result of political changes in political stage, I am afraid that any revolution, any tragic change of political stage can result in divisions in Russia, and I am afraid that we will observe just conflicts in Eastern Europe at the territory of Russia. So for me, despite the fact that Russia's role in international relations is very, very specific in contemporary situation, but for me, one of the interests of Europe and the security of Europe is carrying on political and territory integration of Russia. We cannot absolutely think about divisions of Russia or some separatism. It regards both Russia as general and for example, Kaliningrad region, because there were some attempts to think about Kaliningrad region as an independent state. I think, in my opinion, our Polish and European interest is to carry on integration of Russian Federation.
So, as a specialist, Professor Żęgota, how would you characterize Vladimir Putin? His current role, his current state of mind. Can you try to attempt to describe him?
I think he is quite strong, quite strong player. Even his previous work, I think, is one of his characteristics. He was a worker, employee of Russian Secret Service abroad. He worked in Eastern Germany. So he's in fact he's quite strong realist. Another factor is that for me he is trying to develop, create some specific idea which would be called as some Putin's legacy, for example. Every or almost every political leader in Soviet Union or Russia created some specific idea and created some specific legacy. If we look at map, we have been talking about Joseph Stalin. When we look at map, political map of Europe, this is absolutely legacy of Joseph Stalin.
Well, when you put it that way, as a matter of fact, it's a little bit scary because, well, Putin is 67 now, and Joseph Stalin was 67 when he conquered Eastern Europe and part of Germany. I mean, it was an effect of the Second World War. But are you saying that we should, arm up? Do we need to be afraid?
Yes, and Putin did this with regard to Crimea and Eastern Ukraine, with regard to Abkhazia, South Ossetia. We can observe these actions. So we can observe changes on political map of Europe. But this idea of Putin is, in my opinion, idea of reintegration of post-Soviet space, and this is legacy which he wants to just to give to Russian people, to Russian state, and this is one of his strongest characteristic for me. This is why he is a realist in that way, in that context.
So imagine again the situation: you are meeting Vladimir Putin one-to-one, like just with me at the moment. And you are
giving second meeting with President.
Yeah, well,
after meeting with Zelensky.
Pretty much, yeah. Well, that's the future. That's the future, isn't it? So, given a chance, what would you ask him? One question, just one question. Imagine that situation.
I would like to ask him what he thinks about future relations between Russia and China, because now China is a strategic partner of Russia. In my opinion, it is partner of Russia against the European Union. The Russian authorities are trying to show European partners that Russia can and it can. In fact, did this pivot in direction of China. They cooperate in area of natural resources, energy policy, and transport support infrastructure. But in my opinion, China is tactical partner for Russian Federation. In strategic view, it is absolutely rival and source of threats for Russia. And I would like to ask him if he can see potential for partnership between Russia and the European Union or Europe.
But that's the second question, isn't it?
In context, in second version of this, question, and if he really believes in a partnership between China and Russia, I not believe in to be honest. Okay.
Professor Żęgota, we've touched upon Russian-Chinese relations, but how about Russian-American relations? But I would like to ask you a very cheeky question, as a matter of fact, because would you say that Vladimir Putin or Donald Trump is stronger? Who of those politicians, who is stronger?
I think that both personalities, both politicians are strong persons. But for me, and both politicians are good actors. But in my opinion, Donald Trump is only actor or almost only actor, and Vladimir Putin at the same time is actor and strong politician. I can say that I'm not, of course, specialist in American issues and American policy, especially with regard to post-Soviet space. But what I would like to mention is that approach to politics of Donald Trump is quite business approach, unfortunately for us, for international security, because he looks at international politics and looks at leading of strong global power as some enterprise maybe. This is why he can change his views when he can see some money to earn, just business as usual, we can say. And this is why I can estimate that Vladimir Putin is better behaved, better, more strategic politician than Donald Trump, and I think it is stronger person and more strategic in political meaning, more strategic person in
some say that Putin out Machiavelli, and he's
yes,
one of the best chess players
I
in
think,
the world.
yes, he applies also Machiavelli's ideas in political life. But as I said earlier, Donald Trump for me is especially businessman and not politician. This is why his business approach to politics can be a big problem for America's external policy.
Would you be able to characterize Emmanuel Macron as a business person, especially in his relations with Russia?
He is as well as Angela Merkel. They both are idealists, in my opinion.
Are they?
Yes, in my opinion, especially in Western Europe, very strong his idea of cooperation with Russia without any connections with internal situation in Russia. So it doesn't matter what is Russia, totalitarian Russia or democratic. We have to cooperate with this country because it is the only main important factor in Eastern Europe. And this is why we now observe some attempts to rebuild and reconstruct political relations between France and Russia, between Germany and Russia, and the EU-Russia relations. despite the fact that the situation in Ukraine with regard to eastern Ukraine and Crimea is the same as it was in 2014. So I am afraid that this game, a very specific game, can win Vladimir Putin, because he is realist, and these politicians as Macron and Angela Merkel are in some way idealist. Unfortunately for contemporary situation in Europe, because I think they should be more realistic. Their approach should be more realistic with regard to realistic Putin.
Okay, but would you not say that it is actually offensive realism of John Mearsheimer which explains this type of behavior? Or, well, one might say that's idealist, but there is a lot of things at stake. So I think France in particular wants to close its eyes and do business with Russia, despite ethics doesn't matter.
Yes, I agree with you. The ethics doesn't matter. Ethics isn't a big issue for them. Of course, Russia presents some elements of offensive realism. Stronger you are, the most serious actor you are in international relations, and we can describe in this way also role of Russia and activity of Russian authorities in the international environment. So yes, I agree with your description of this situation.
How about Bashar al-Assad, Syria, and Russia's help to this country? Do you think that without 2015 intervention in Syria, Bashar al-Assad would be still in power?
Yes, I think that Russia's support was absolutely crucial issue for carrying on power in hands of Bashar al-Assad. Situation in Syria is quite complicated, especially last informations about I can say even open conflict between Turkey and Russia in Syria. The situation is very dynamic in this context, but I would like to look at this situation not from point of view of the characteristics of internal political stage of Syria, but from point of view of international security and international relations, and even in global approach. Now we can observe some rivalry between global and regional power. The only global power in my view is United States of America, and we have at the same time some regional powers which want to be global powers. These powers are Russia and China. The main condition of be not regional but global power is influence on other regions in the world. Since intervention in Syria, Russia joined to the group of powers which can act in not only in their region, international region, but also in other parts of the world. And this activity and Russian presence in Syria is strong signal to America. Yes, we Russians are ready to play role of global power, not only regional power. In 90s of or the first decade of 21st century, Russia would act only in post-Soviet area, which was natural international region of this country. Now Russia, we can estimate that Russia is becoming global power because this country can act in other regions. This is why situation in Syria is so important, not only for Syria, not only for Middle East, but even for rivalry and relations between global powers. We can observe now changes of international order from unilateral order into multilateral order, where not only United States will be global powers, but also Russia and China. This is why this Russian presence, as I said, in Syria and in Middle East is so important. It is great signal for United States that Russia is going to other international regions, not only acting in its region, post-Soviet space.
Well, I completely agree with you in these respects. From my perspective, I strongly disagree with such characterizations that Russia has the only one ally in the Middle East, because Bashar al-Assad is not only one ally of Russia, it's also like President Sisi of Egypt.
Yes.
There's Iraqi government is strongly, increasingly pro-Russian, or was pro-Russian.
Turkey,
Iran, Turkey.
Iran is,
Turkey not
yes.
today, especially what's happened at the border, at the Idlib province. But in general, Russia's geopolitical outreach is increasing. What's happening in Venezuela or Colombia or Libya? That's
Yes,
just incredible.
yes.
What I mean, incredible. It's scary to some, but from Russian perspective, surely from the foreign policy perspective, it's incredible what they can do. Question to the specialist, which I have, is: has it to do with the weakness of United States, or the purposeful retraction from its responsibilities, from its obligations?
For me, both factors are important, because every global power, even in history, had its great period in this history. For example, Spain, Portugal, or Great Britain were such powers, and after this, of course, appeared another potential global power, and this appearance of United States was First and Second World War. It is important milestone of this global power of United States, and it is absolutely natural situation that these global relations between these global powers and these global powers are changing. And what is important, these changes in relations between global powers, we could observe in context of global all regional conflicts, military conflicts, and I'm afraid that maybe there will be some attempts to solve these relations in a way of between the United States and China, United States and Russia, between these regional and global powers in a way on military conflict. But in fact, for me, main rival of United States is not Russia, is China. This is why, for me, in strategic view, United States and West will try to encourage Russia to be supporter of Western global powers against China. You can see, of course, not in tactical dimension. We can talk about strategic dimension next 50, 70, 80 years. We will observe probably, I suppose, this processes of cooperation, not conflict, between West and Russia.
Well, so would you say that there is a chance for Russia, post-Putin Russia, let's say, to join NATO or European Union, as a matter of fact?
maybe not join NATO and the European Union, but to work out some very, very special relations between the European Union and Russia. We can observe now we can observe Brexit, and we can observe how both sides are trying to work out some special economic and trade relations. Maybe we will talk about such special economic and trade and political relations between the European Union and Russia. Russia will not be former member of the European Union, but links between these countries, or Norway is a good example for this. We will observe such close political and economic relations between Russia and the EU and NATO that we will say that it is not full membership, but almost membership.
You've touched upon Brexit, and it's very interesting how this impacts the region, the post-Soviet space region, and I'm just wondering whether such a collaboration in the future would require Moscow to allow for Ukraine entrance to European Union, the entrance of Ukraine to European Union or NATO. Would Russia ever agree to such a political scenario?
In tactical dimension, no. I can say no. The only in tactical in next 10-15 years, the only condition of joining Ukraine to the European Union and NATO is solving problem of Crimea and Donetsk and Luhansk national republics. For me, there is only way to solve these problems. The Ukrainian authorities should just cut off these both regions, all these regions, and to work out some relations with Russia in this context. But in strategic way, I believe in united Europe from Lisbon to Vladivostok. Even.
That would be great. That would be great. That would be something
absolutely idea in which I believe, but not in tactical approach, in strategic.
So
approach.
as an idea, it is appealing, but as a reality, it's not achievable yet. Is that what you're saying?
Yet. I would like to emphasize this word yet.
Because I just want to touch on one last dimension, if you allow, of course.
Yes. Of course.
We're running out of time, and you are basically, you've allowed this interview to go on for such a long time. But one last question. So there is a strong research on China and Chinese economy that suggests, especially by Professor Babone, that Chinese economy has been slowing down for the last 10 years, basically. And Chinese economic development, the progression of the Chinese economy made it possible for China to grow into the position of almost superpower. Considering the fact that economic growth is slowing down and the fact that coronavirus is spreading and affecting not only one region but also the mainland China, would you say that China can turn into hostile international player if it would be cut off of its economical powerhouse? Would it turn into military conquest?
Of course, for me, the most important factor of China's power, it doesn't matter if we talk about China as regional power or even potential global power, is economy, not military potential. Of course, the Russian authorities are trying to develop military potential. They are trying to develop its military fleet, for example. But for me, the most important basis of potential power, global power of Chinese People's Republic is economy. And now we can observe this great challenge connected with coronavirus, and I think nobody knows what will be results of or influence, or not even Chinese but global economy of this problem and challenge of coronavirus. So it is absolutely different and absolutely complicated question how to estimate what will be further development of Chinese economy. But in fact, Chinese economy is still more innovative and not based only on low cost work costs as we can observe in other countries in India, Bangladesh or Cambodia. China's economy is at absolutely different level, and its innovative potential of this economy we can even compare with even Europe or some European countries. So Chinese economy is still changing. What will be the impact of coronavirus? It's hard to estimate. It's hard to say. The situation is still changing. Is very dynamic. This is why it's very hard to estimate what will be future situation in this context.
Okay, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
It was a pleasure for me.
I hope that you have safe journey to Olsztyn, and hope to
Yes.
see you soon. And
Okay.
not in 11 years.
I will meet you in Olsztyn or in Poland in
Definitely.
some
I hope to be
conference.
there this year. So hopefully Olsztyn will be on
Okay,
my.
so I can invite you officially to Olsztyn.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
Zegota.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.